the ancient world. The people who heard the commandments at Mount Sinai were people who were used to hard labour. These people who gathered at the base of the mountain were the newly rescued exiles from Egypt. Verse 2, if you've still got the Bible open, gives us the context. I am the Lord your God, Moses says, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. As slaves, they have been forced to work unbearable hours in the blistering heat of the Egyptian sun, baking bricks for Pharaoh, trying to supply his insatiable appetite for new building projects. Exodus chapter 5, just 15 chapters earlier than the ones in which we've just read the Ten Commandments, gives us a picture of the times. Moses and Aaron had appealed to Pharaoh to let the people go so that they may go and worship him in the desert. But they didn't get the response that they desired. Here's what happened. The king of Egypt said, Moses and Aaron, why are you taking the people away from their labour? Get back to your work. Look, the people of the land are now numerous, and you are stopping them from working. In fact, their intervention seems to have made things even worse. That same day, Pharaoh gave this order to the slave drivers and foremen in charge of the people. You no longer supply straw for making bricks. Let them go and gather their own straw, but require them to make the same number of bricks as before. Don't reduce the quota. They are lazy. That's why they are crying out, let us go and sacrifice to our God. Make the work harder for them, so that they keep working and pay no attention to lies. In other words, Pharaoh was saying, if you've got time to whinge, then you're not working hard enough. So work harder, work harder. These then are the people who gathered at the foot of Mount Sinai and who first heard this commandment to rest. Former Egyptian slaves. People who had lived all their lives under constant pressure, knowing that excuses were pointless, that they were powerless to do anything about the oppression they bore, knowing that their slave drivers could make their work harder, to make them endure even longer hours. Work that was relentless, a life that must have seemed relentless. Movement 2, pressure today. I don't know about you, but I'm so grateful that I was not born an Egyptian slave. Come to speak of it, I'm so grateful that I have not been born as a modern day slave. There are more slaves in the world today than there ever have been in the history of the human race. I'm so grateful that I'm not one of the many traffic workers who work long hours in unsafe conditions in an Indian cotton mill in order that we may buy cheap clothes on our high streets, or long hours in a soggy Lincolnshire field harvesting crops in order that we may buy from rock bottom prices from our supermarkets. I'm so grateful I was not born in those conditions, that I had opportunity. And yet, even though perhaps none of us are in that kind of circumstance, all of us know what pressure lives feel like. Lives where productivity and efficiency are all that seem to matter. Where there are always jobs to be done, something to be achieved. Perhaps for you, it's pressure in the workplace that is the key thing. Where everyone arrives early and leaves late. It's just the way things are. Perhaps it's the pressure from a tough boss. They may literally be slave drivers. Oh, it doesn't feel like it. It's what happens when the number of staff in your department are halved and you have to carry on doing the same amount of work. A friend of mine is currently recovering from a minor nervous breakdown. She's on a phased return to work. She's a probation officer. And this is exactly the thing that has tipped her over the edge. Exactly the same amount of work to do in the department. Half the number of people. Go figure. Perhaps it's what the government talks about, cutting out the fat, having lean organisations. Perhaps it's the pressure of family life that you feel. Parents can easily feel pressure today to give their children every opportunity, and so they sign them up for every club and activity and wear out their own nerves and their cars as they shove their young ones around to do all these different things, cramming their lives and their own lives with all sorts of activities. Piano lessons, dance classes, football clubs, you name it. And the pressure of parents starts very, very early. Breastfeeding is best, we hear, so we better get it right. And if you believe the advertisers, we can't really just play with our kids because we enjoy playing with our kids just for the sheer fun of it, or our grandkids. We have to provide them with some neurological stimulation, and this thing will help. Pressure even in family life. We live in a culture, do we not, that is obsessed with productivity, with achievement, with performance, where continual pressure results in a permanent sense of anxiety and restlessness, and underlying anxiety that permeates the whole of life. Perhaps some of you know what I'm talking about. We are not Egyptian slaves, but we are people who know what it can feel like to be overworked and weary. We are used to having demands placed upon us. And just in case you need reminding, church can feel like a pressurised place sometimes, can't it? Particularly during pastoral vacancies. There's the normal amount of pressure to sign up and to play your part in the life of the church. There's the pressure to make quite sure that we're giving responsibility in order that the work may carry on. There's the pressure to give our money, to contribute our gifts. And this is all just in the normal state of affairs. But during the pastoral vacancy, the pressure, especially for some, Suzanne, I'll mention the name now. You know what I mean, don't you? There's work to be done for God. There are things to achieve for God. It's a privilege, I know, but it's also pressure. Movement 3. Grace for the ancient world. Let's hear this Sabbath commandment again, as these former Egyptian slaves must have heard it. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labour and do all your work, but the 7th day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you, nor your son or daughter, nor your manservant or maidservant, nor your animals, nor the alien within your gate. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea and all that is in them. But he rested on the 7th day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. These people, these ex-slaves, listening to God at the foot of Mount Sinai, listening to the God who had rescued them. And what did they hear him declare? They heard him say this, that he was not another Pharaoh. He was not a slave driver. He is the God of rest. The God who made the heavens and the earth in 6 days rested on the 7th. This is the God who stops. This is the God who sits down. This is the God who takes time, who lights his pipe, who surveys the wonderful creation that he has made and says with rightful pride, "It's good, isn't it good?" W.H. Davis, in his poem Leisure, says, "What is this life if full of care, if we have no time to stand and stare?" These ex-slaves had never been given a chance to stand and stare in their whole lives. They were never tourists at the Egyptian pyramids, nor guests at the Pharaoh's palace. But this God of rest has set them free, and now he gives them time to stand and stare. He gives them a day of rest, not once a year or once a month, but every week. He gives them a rhythm of work and rest. And God's command come gift is not for the selected few only. It's for everyone. He had no intention of creating a kind of mini-Egypt where the powerful men in Israel could become the new slave drivers who sit with their feet up once a week while everyone carries on serving them. Everyone else carries on working. No, on the Sabbath, you shall not do any work, neither you, nor your son or daughter, nor your manservant or maidservant, nor your animals, nor the alien within your gates. God had no intention of creating another subclass, another culture of oppression. He was creating a counterculture to the oppression and relentless pressure of Egypt. This was to be a contrast community. The Sabbath command was saying, you can rest. It's okay to stop. Everyone can enjoy the rhythm of work and rest that I, the Lord your God, have always intended for you. So these Egyptian slaves heard the Sabbath commandment as the God of rest speaking good news to them that they too can rest, that they will never again be worked to the bone, that for them slavery is over, that God is not a new Pharaoh, but the God who sets people free to enjoy his rest. Movement 4, grace for today. God is still the God who sets people free and gives his people rest. Jesus, in one of his most famous sayings, said this, "Come to me, all you who are weary and are burdened, and I will give you rest." New Testament unpacks this profound statement when it tells us that Jesus Christ himself is our rest and that we can enter into him. Read Hebrews 3, starting at verse 11 if you like. It tells us that Christ is the fulfillment of all special days, including the Sabbath. Have a look at Colossians chapter 2 sometime. The fulfillment in Christ is signified in the shift of that special day from the Sabbath, the Jewish Sabbath, which was a Saturday, to the Sunday, which was the first day in the new week, the day of resurrection, the day in which the Spirit was poured out at Pentecost. By the time of Jesus, his earthly life I'm talking about, there had been a shift in the Sabbath, in the gift of the Sabbath, that God had. Let me start that sentence again. By the time of Jesus, the idea that the Sabbath was the day of rest had been utterly mangled and distorted by the Pharisees, the religious lawyers of the day. They had carefully defined it in a multitude of negatives, so that it was no longer good news to people. It was no longer his gift to them. It had become a burden. It no longer spelled freedom to the people. It actually took them back into a new kind of bondage. And so the Jesus who described his ministry as one who had come to set the captives free often found himself in conflict with the religious lawyers of his days, who wanted to make quite sure that every dot and tittle was followed, that all their little interpretations of what a good Sabbath should look like. Actually, Jesus contradicted them. Jesus was for the Sabbath. He kept it himself. He went to the synagogue. But not in a negative, legalistic way, as some people would have it. What Jesus did was redeem the Sabbath. Redeem the Sabbath principle and give it afresh to all those who would follow him, so that once again it might become a blessing for God's people. Now, I don't believe for a minute that Christians today are meant to keep the Sabbath in the Old Testament sense. But we are invited. We do need to reimagine and adopt the Sabbath principle every bit as much as the ancients did. Why? Because we're designed for it. We need physical rest. We can't keep folding the paper indefinitely, even if we're a big bit of paper. We all have limits. Our bodies have a habit of telling us when they need rest. We all need emotional and spiritual renewal as well. We need a pause from our normal routine in which we can unwind, in which we can reorientate ourselves towards God. To slow down enough to connect with him, to have our priorities reordered in his presence, to hear his voice in the slower pace, and to enjoy his company just for the sake of it. To waste some time with him. To pray. Not in the kind of, I've got to get through my prayer list because I've got to get on the bus at such a time, otherwise I'll miss my train and I'll be late for work, and that will do. But to pray in a relaxed kind of way. Some of you are thinking, yeah, nice. Have you forgotten that we've got a pastoral vacancy on? What kind of a Sabbath do you think Sunday is for me? No, I haven't forgotten, by the way. I'm very conscious of the fact. But for some of you, Sunday is not a completely relaxing day. Because during this pastoral vacancy, you have even more work to do. I understand. Remember, the Sabbath principle, Sabbath is not just for Sunday, but for life. That we can find other moments in which to enjoy Sabbath rest. And maybe for you as a church, there's the need during this time of pastoral vacancy to be really careful how much you take on. You don't have to do everything. It's okay to let some things drop for a time. Hey, and sometimes when we let things drop for a time, we notice that we don't really need them either. When we simplify, we find ourselves freer and enhanced sometimes. I have no idea how long your pastoral vacancy will last for. It might not be for all that much longer, or it might be for quite some time to come. If it goes on for a little while, make quite sure that you don't overdo it. Here's an idea. Why don't you set yourself a Sabbath month as a church, when actually you let go for a whole month of everything apart from the absolute essentials. And during that Sabbath month, you can almost do something, people, you can even do something really, really outrageous that you could close the church on a Sunday morning and all go to different churches in Swansea. And then at your next church meeting, you can all come back together and say, oh, I went to such and such a church and it was really great there. I really gained this. I like this idea. Buy yourself some rest. You give yourself pause and be enriched in a different way. Just a bit of a wild thought. Take it or leave it. I don't mind. We are called to be counter-cultural people, to live distinctively. And one of the ways that Christian people can live distinctively today is by resting, is by adopting this pattern of work and rest, and not working to the incessant drumbeats of our manic world. We'd be healthy for it, but we would stand out if we didn't. In the midst of our restless, pressured and driven society, God is creating a counter-culture where everyone has space to enjoy that rhythm of work and rest, which He has built into His creation. And God sets us free, which kind of challenges also and reminds us that it's not just us free, but everyone free. So that actually we can help to set other people free as well, not by lecturing them, but if we have certain responsibility in the workplace, for example, that we don't drive people beyond their limits, that we don't unnecessarily perpetuate the culture of coming in before everybody else and leaving before everybody else has left. And in a subliminal kind of way, indicate that's the way it ought to be, that's the way it should be in my department. We can set Indian factory workers free by not buying from Primark and other such places, by looking at our own purchasing choices and patterns. As we enjoy the freedom of God's rest, so we are invited to set other people free, allow them to enjoy their rest as well. It is God's gift to humanity. The word of the Lord to you today and to me is enjoy my rest. I invite you to close your eyes and we're going to listen to a bit of music together and really enjoy God's rest.